Okay, so our next definition is semi-monthly. This is going to be paid twice each month. A lot of companies do this where they pay you on the first of the month and then again halfway through the month on the 15th. Okay, this would mean that you're getting 24 paychecks in 1 year. All right, the next one is monthly. Okay, so if we're getting paid monthly, this is only getting paid once a month. Okay, and so this would mean we're getting 12 paychecks each year. Okay, now I know that we have talked about direct deposit before. Okay, and so remember, direct deposit is when they are taking your paycheck, and instead of giving you an actual physical check, they are actually directly putting it into your account. Okay, so your check is automatically deposited into your account. And typically, this is into your checking account. All right. So the next one, okay, hourly rate. This is the amount paid for each hour of work. Okay, regular hours. These are the hours that are part of your regular schedule. For most employers, this is generally about 40 hours a week or less. Okay, typically anything over 40 hours a week is not going to count as regular hours. That's going to count as overtime hours. Okay, so overtime hours are the extra hours beyond your regular hours. Okay, and then typically these overtime hours are going to get paid an overtime hourly rate. Okay, so this is typically going to be a higher rate of pay than the regular hourly pay. Okay, now there's two pretty typical types of overtime pay. One of them is time and a half. The other one is double time. So we're going to talk about both of those, but time and a half, typically the way they figure out what your time and a half rate is they take 1.5 and they multiply it by your regular hourly rate. Okay, and then if they're doing double time, they're typically taking 2 and multiplying it by your regular hourly rate. Okay, now we do have something called gross pay. Gross pay is your total pay for all of your hours for that pay period before the taxes are taken out. Okay, and our last definition is for minimum wage. This is the lowest allowed hourly pay rate. Okay, and this rate is usually set by the government. Okay, so I believe right now in California, I believe when I looked it up, the minimum wage was $12 an hour. I'm not sure if they have changed that since the last time I looked it up. I had heard talks about them changing it to 15. Is it 15 now or is it 12? We'll have to double check online and see. Okay. So we're going to go over the examples, and I'm glad that we looked it up and we clarified that the minimum wage in California is actually $14 right now, not 12. So I was a little outdated on that. All right, so let's look at these examples here. Okay, it says Christina is paid bi-weekly. Her annual salary is $37,000. What is her bi-weekly salary rounded to the nearest cent? So she's getting paid bi-weekly, but they're giving me her annual salary here. Okay, so this is how much she makes in a year, but she's getting paid every other week, right? She gets paid every 2 weeks. Okay, it wants to know how much is her bi-weekly salary. So it's asking us to figure out what she gets for each paycheck, all right? Now, we know if she's getting paid bi-weekly, this means she's getting paid, if I look back up at my definitions, what I wrote down up top here, I know she's getting paid 26 checks throughout the whole year. Okay, this is her salary for the whole year. So if it wants to know her bi-weekly salary, to get this, what I'm going to do is I'm going to divide by the number of checks she receives for the entire year. Okay. So I'm going to take her salary, $37,000. I'm going to take it, I'm going to divide it by 26, and I'm going to go ahead and see what I get. Okay. Now I'm just going to get my calculator out so I can make this a little bit easier for me. Okay. So I'm going to go ahead and do 37,000 divided by 26. Okay. So here's what I get. I'm getting 1,423, and then I have a bunch of change. It told me to round to the nearest cent, which means it wants 2 numbers after the decimal point. So I'm going to look 3 numbers out. I'm going to look at those 3 numbers, and this 6 is going to tell me what to do with the 7. It is 5 or higher, so I'm going to round the 7 up to an 8. Okay, so here's what I'm going to get for her bi-weekly salary is $1,423.08. Okay, and that's rounding it to the nearest cent. Okay. Okay, so for number 2, it says Manny is paid semi-monthly. His semi-monthly salary is $1,239. What is his annual salary? So here they're asking for the annual salary. Okay, so they're asking for that big number. What does Manny make for the whole entire year? When they're asking for the annual salary, instead of dividing, we're going to multiply by the number of checks he receives in 1 year. Okay, so in this problem, we're going to be multiplying instead of dividing because we're going the opposite way. We're going from a small amount, his semi-monthly salary, to a larger amount, what he makes for the whole year. So we're going to multiply. Okay, so we're going to go ahead and take his monthly salary, $1,239, and multiply it by, for semi-monthly. Semi-monthly means how many checks per year. If I go up above and I look at my semi-monthly notes, what I wrote down, he's getting 24 checks for the entire year. Okay, so I'm going to multiply by 24. and that's going to give me his yearly salary. So let's go ahead and get our calculators out. 1,239 times 24 is giving us $29,736 for the entire year. Okay, so there's my answer for that one. I'm going to box my answer up here. I forgot to do that. There we go. Okay, so for problem number 3, it says Maureen works at a local Chick-fil-A restaurant. Her regular hourly wage is $9.70. So apparently she must not live in California. If she works regularly 40 hours per week, what is her regular weekly pay? Okay, so you have her hourly wage right here. Okay, she's working 40 hours per week. It wants to know her regular weekly pay. So how much money does she make in a week? Okay, so we're going to go ahead and we're going to take her hourly rate and we're going to multiply by the number of hours she works each week to find her weekly pay. So I'm going to go ahead and get my calculator out. And I get $388. So this is how much she's making each week. That's how much she's getting paid. Okay, so for number 4, it says if Maureen from example 3, so from this previous example, works overtime, she receives an hourly rate of 1.5 times her regular hourly rate. Okay, so her overtime rate is 1.5 times, which is basically time and a half. Now, instead of using the fraction for this, I'm going to use 1.5 for this one. Okay, now here's the question. What is Maureen's hourly overtime rate? So it's asking what is her overtime rate? So remember from this side, we said to find our overtime rate, we're going to take her time and a half and multiply it by the regular hourly. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and since she's making this time and a half, I'm going to do 1.5 times her regular hourly, which was in the previous problem up above, right? So her regular hourly was $9.70. And so we're going to go ahead and see what she makes for her hourly rate. So 1.5 times $9.70 is $14.55 per hour. Okay, so question 5 says Janice earns $10 per hour if her regular hours are 40 hours per week. So this is her regular hours, is 40 hours per week. And she receives time and a half, so she's making time and a half overtime. Find her total pay for a week in which she works 45 hours. So they're asking us to find the total pay for a 45-hour week. Okay. All right. So this one, I'm going to kind of try to help you guys out with this one by giving you like a general formula to follow. Okay. And this will be helpful in all the questions going forward. Okay. So I want you to write this down. Okay. The way we're going to solve this problem is we're going to take her regular hourly rate and we're going to multiply it by her number of regular hours. So we're going to do the regular rate times her regular hours. Okay, that's what she would get for the 40 hours. Then we're going to add to that her time and a half rate, okay, or her overtime rate, right? Now, remember, she's getting some of these hours are going to be overtime hours, and in this case, she's getting paid time and a half. So there's that multiplier, right? So we need to think about what is her overtime multiplier. In this case, we're going to use 1.5, okay? And we're going to multiply that by her regular rate. And then we're going to multiply that by her overtime hours. Now, this is not her total hours worked. This is only the hours that were considered overtime, okay? And then this is going to give us our total pay, or also sometimes called our gross pay. Okay, also known as gross pay. Okay, so what we're going to do is we're going to fill in everything we know into this formula. Okay, and this formula is super duper important that you write this down, okay, and that you refer to it. Okay, so this is super important that you write this down and you refer to it. Okay, regular rate times regular hours plus your overtime multiplier times the regular rate times the overtime hours is going to equal your total pay, also known as gross pay. Okay, so we're going to go ahead and plug into this formula. Okay, her regular rate is $10. Her regular hours are 40. Plus her overtime multiplier in this problem, since it's time and a half, what do we use for time and a half? 1.5. So we're going to do 1.5 times her regular rate, which is 10, times her overtime hours. Now you have to be careful here. It told us she worked 45 hours. Are all of these her overtime hours? How many of these are her overtime hours? Not all 45 of them, because 40 of them were regular. So the leftover is 5, right? So times 5. All right, this is going to equal her total pay. So let's go ahead and solve, okay? In order to solve this, we're going to multiply here, 40. Before we add, we've got to multiply this group over here. So I'm going to get my calculator out. 1.5 times 10 times 5. Okay, so I get 75 there. I'll just do that one more time and double check. 1.5 times 10, and then times 5. Okay, 75. And I think I forgot a 0 right here because 10 times 40 is actually 400. So please make sure that you update that. Okay, now we're going to go ahead and add. And so 400 plus 75 gives me her total pay of 475. Okay, so 475 is your answer. That was her total pay for the week, factoring in that overtime. Okay, so we're going to move on to number 6, and number 6 says Samantha worked her 40 regular hours last week. So here's her regular hours, plus 7 overtime hours. So it's telling you exactly how many overtime hours she worked, right? She gets the time and a half rate. Okay, so when we're thinking about time and a half, we're going to use for our multiplier, we're going to use 1.5, right? Okay, her gross pay was $611.05. So in this problem, they told us her pay. In the last problem, they didn't tell us her pay. We had to find that. In this one, they already told us her pay. Let's see what they're asking us to find. What was her regular hourly rate? Okay, so in this problem, we don't know what the rate was. So since we don't know the rate, these two things are going to be missing in this problem. And the pay is going to already be filled in, okay, in our formula. So what we need to do is we need to call the rate something we don't know. Let's just call it X, okay? And we're going to fill in everything else we do know. So I'm going to call the regular rate X since it's unknown, right? So I'm going to use X for that. Okay, so I'm going to set up my formula. X times her regular hours is 40 plus her overtime multiplier, 1.5, times her regular rate, again, we don't know what it is, so let's call it X, times her overtime hours. Told me 7 overtime hours. Okay, that equals her total pay. Remember, another word for total pay is gross pay, which they told us here was $611.05. $611.05. Okay, so now we're going to start solving this equation. Okay, so here's what we're going to do. First, we're going to go ahead and simplify where we can. So see, in this term here, I have 1.5 times 7 times x. Let's just simplify the 1.5 times 7, and we get 1050 for that. So here I have 1050 or 10.5 times x. Over here, I'm going to rewrite this so it's more familiar to what you guys have seen in equations, 40x. Remember, it doesn't matter the order of these. Okay, next, I'm going to go ahead and combine my like terms. So I'm going to add 40 and 10.5 because you have 40 x's and 10.5 x's, right? It's just like adding 2x plus 3x. It's 5x, right? So 40x plus 10.5x is giving us 50.5x. Okay, last, we're going to do our last step in solving the equation, which is divide. Okay, we want to make sure we divide by the coefficient of x, or the number that's multiplying by x. So we're going to divide by 50.5 on both sides. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and take my 611.05 divided by 50.5. Okay, so here's what I get. 12.1. Now, let's think about what that means. This is an amount of money. So if I find x is 12.1, I'm going to write my answer as money, which is $12.10. And this is an hourly rate, so this is the amount per hour. Okay, so that is the hourly rate. So let's take a look at number 7. Okay, so number 7 says Jillian worked 40 regular hours. So it's giving us her regular hours plus 2 overtime hours at double time rate. Okay, so if it's double time, we're not going to use 1.5. Remember, our multiplier for double time, if we look over at the front, double time was multiplied by 2, right? Okay, so we're going to make sure we use 2 for our multiplier. Okay, her gross pay was $484. What is her regular hourly rate? So let's plug into the formula everything we know. We do not know the regular hourly rate. We're trying to find it. So this is going to be x. Okay, so we have x times the regular hours is 40 plus, okay, our overtime multiplier here is 2 instead of 1.5 times our regular rate is x. We don't know it. Our overtime hours, 2 overtime hours, equals our gross pay or our total pay. We know that is $484. Okay, so now we're going to simplify and solve. I'm first going to simplify this part, the 2 times 2. It's giving me 4x. Over here, I'm just going to write this as 40x. Okay. Now I'm going to combine my like terms. 40x's plus 4x's makes 44x's. Okay. And last, I'm going to go ahead and divide by the coefficient. So divide by 44 because that number is multiplying by x. So the opposite is dividing by it. Let's get my calculator out and see what I get. Okay, so I get 11, all right? So x is 11, but remember this is an amount of money. So this is the hourly rate is $11 per hour. Okay, so it says Jonathan worked 40 hours last week. So this was his regular hours plus 5 overtime hours at a time and a half rate. Okay, so it is telling us their time and a half. So I know for my multiplier, I'm going to use 1.5. Okay, his gross pay was $712.50. So this is how much he's getting paid. How much is Jonathan's regular hourly pay rate? Okay, so let's plug in the things that we know into our formula. We do not know his regular rate. That's going to be X. We do know his regular hours. Those were 40. Plus, we know the multiplier, 1.5. We don't know the regular rate, so X again. We do know the overtime hours. They were 5. Okay, and we do know the total gross pay, $712.50. All right. So now let's go ahead and start simplifying some things. So the first thing I can simplify is right here, 1.5 times 5. So that's giving me 7.5x. I can also change the order of this so it looks a little more friendly, 40x. Okay. Now I can go ahead and start combining my like terms. So 7.5 plus 40 is 47.5x. That's going to equal $712.50. Last step, I'm going to go ahead and divide both sides by the coefficient of x, which is the number that x is multiplying by. So I'm going to divide by that number. Okay, so 47.5 is dividing into 712.5. Okay, so I get x equals 15. So remember, this is an hourly rate of pay. So this really means $15 per hour. Okay, so that is the hourly rate of pay. All right.